Hello, Valerie. It's lovely to see you.
Hello.
Some of you are watching because you're there every day at 10 o'clock for our thought for the day, but Saturdays are rather special. We're relaxed in our own rooms. I'm at Ringwood. Valerie is down in Christchurch. I've never met her before, but I've heard about her, and I was intrigued to ask her some questions for this particular conversation. So I hope you'll enjoy it. Just relax and sit back, and I'll ask Valerie various questions about her life, and she'll respond just as she wishes to. We've got a common interest in mission work abroad, so that's what I'm going to try and draw out of Valerie this morning. Thank you for being there, and thank you for your husband setting up the electronics. So you started off doing voluntary work abroad, Valerie. Can you just tell us sort of your qualifications or why you did it, and where and when you went?
Well, I'd been in the St John ambulance for many years, and it had always been my aim to go and work at the St John Eye Hospital, the famous eye hospital in Jerusalem.
Yes, yes.
And I've been a mental health nurse for 26 years. So my retirement was coming up and I could finish in 2005. So a few months before, I applied to go to Jerusalem. And after lots of filling in forms and interviews and people giving me references and everything, it was agreed I could go for 6 months. But the only problem was I wasn't eye trained because they're very specialist practitioner nurses. So what would I do out there for 6 months? So matron was very good. She said I could do all the first aid training and the re-exams in first aid, because obviously a St John hospital, they have to keep up with their first aid training. And 3 days I spent in the operating theatre helping out in the recovery room, the pre and post-op rooms. And then once a fortnight, which was fantastic, I was able to go to the outreach vans and help them set up in the West Bank, and where they do lots of eye examinations in the villages. So that was absolutely great. That was really the thrill of being able to see them set up in the West Bank and help all the Palestinians have their eye tests.
That's wonderful, isn't it? We've been familiar with that in Zambia, where a friend of ours is eye surgeon at a hospital and takes his truck out during the week. So give us an idea of how large the hospital is, because I've been in, but not, I've stayed in the hotel next door and we've visited the eye hospital, but no idea really how many patients might be in there. Any idea?
Well, it's quite a big hospital. It had 80 beds, but now they only use about 50 beds because there's so many day cases. And since I've been, it's been modernised yet again. So it's a state-of-the-art hospital, and it's twinned with Moorfields. And they're trained to a very high standard, really. And the outpatient department is fantastic because they come from all and sundry all around to go there. So it's really good, really busy place.
Yes. So if we're out there with a group and we have an eye problem, we know where to go, don't we?
Yes, yes. And the fantastic thing is they've been able to set up a little clinic in the old part of the old city, along the mirror stand near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it was the actual land that belonged to the Knights of St John hundreds of years ago. Wow. And they set up this clinic there for anyone that has any eye problems while they're visiting the old city. So the tourists can go there, or, the Palestinians, any locals can go there and just get an eye checkup.
Gosh, I'm a bit late in the day finding that out. I first went in 1964, and have been taking groups since on and off, but I never knew we were so close to eye help. Tell us just a bit about the desert work, because obviously going out to the Palestinians is something we'd like to know about.
Yes, well, you obviously had to take a long time to get there because you've got to go through the wall and all the checkups and things. And then they have to get up so early. Some of them get up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to reach the hospital. So they've done half a day's work before they get there. Yeah. And then we would set up all the equipment in the 2 vans, go out and pass through the wall. And then usually when we got on the outskirts of somewhere, Anapta or Jericho, somewhere like that, or Janine, we would set up a picnic and have a breakfast before we started the work.
Wonderful.
So that was good. We all took eggs and contributed tins of sardines and bread and had a lovely picnic. And then we would set up in the clinic. And I used to help with the equipment, and then I would make them the mint tea because they all love their mint tea to keep going. And once the patients started to arrive, I'd take sweets around to the children and try and keep them amused, because they had a long wait, obviously, until it was their turn to go in the clinic.
Yeah. I'm so pleased you mentioned mint tea, because it was just chatting and walking through Jerusalem that we dropped in and had mint tea, and we go back to the same place each time, and we try and get mint tea in England now as well.
Yes.
That's real outreach, because some of our viewers may not understand that there is the wall around Jerusalem, and you have to go through that to get to the West Bank, to Bethlehem and to Jericho, as you say. So that's quite a task in itself. So did you go several times out into the...
Oh yes, many times, yes. Once every fortnight I went out there.
Wow.
And then on Sundays I would go along to St George's, which is the Anglican cathedral.
Yeah.
And they had an Arabic service, which wasn't much use to me, but at 11 o'clock they had an English speaking service. So I would go there, and there'd be people from the consulates around and tourists and things, and I would help there on Sunday morning if I could do a reading, or, you know, help with any of the collection or anything.
That's great.
That was nice.
Yes, we love going there, because if the group is a bit large, we put, say, a dozen of them into St George's, and then the other dozen we take over to Abraham's shop opposite, where he's busy selling this bits of jewelry and olive wood. And so you perhaps you know Abraham, because he goes to the cathedral. Yes.
All the wooden statues and things as well. All the things they make out there, the Palestinian pottery, lots of little things they make for souvenirs to raise money. Yeah,
it's all income for them, isn't it? It's very important, because some of the schools we go to, the parents can't afford the fees, but they do send in their works of art, the pottery or the olive wood, as part of their contribution, and we buy that, and the money goes into the schools. So would you say, out of the voluntary work that you've done abroad, St John's is the place, Jerusalem, or are there other places you'd...
Well, that was my favourite one, and probably because it was the first one, and St John were very good to me. They paid my insurance and my airfare. Now, the other ones I did were completely self-funded, because I went twice with USPG.
Yeah.
The first time to Cape Town, to a mother and baby home, and the second time to a home for the blind in Penang, Malaysia.
Wow.
To look after the seniors there. So those two were quite good, but it was just so interesting to explore those areas.
Yes. So what did USPG, United Society for the Propagation of the Gospel?
That's right, yes.
So what did you do with them that would have been different to the St John's work?
Well, it was the exchange experience program. You go out for 6 months, and you see what skills you can offer wherever they send you.
Yeah.
So in the mother and baby home, again, it was sort of training the staff, first aid, health and safety, fire lectures, things like that. And I did some basic healthcare and hygiene and life skills with the mothers. But the problem was they only spoke Afrikaners. Yeah. So it had to be a bit of interpreting and the use of pictures and flip charts and things like that. But that was very enjoyable, because I hired a car by the month and went out exploring on my days off. And there's so many beautiful places at Cape Town.
Real adventure.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, wonderful.
And then in Penang, my mission, that you're given something to specifically do, the mission there was to look after 12 elderly seniors that were retired there. And they were sort of looked after in the early 20s, because they're completely blind, by the missionaries that were in Malacca. But then in their old age, they were offered a place in Penang. So I used to take them out in the minibus, and we would go to the Spice Garden, or take them shopping, or go to clinics, whatever, they wanted to do, really, and keep them occupied with quizzes and current affairs, music sessions, all that sort of thing, because they're completely blind. But obviously they want to be doing activities and want to be stimulated.
Yes. So you were learning from them what they could hear and feel, and explain to them what you could see.
Yes. Yes, and they loved it. They loved just going out and, in a very relaxed atmosphere. We could go to the beach, or we could go to the botanical gardens. It was just beautiful out there. Smashing.
Yeah. So how long ago was this? Was it some time ago, and you've been back since?
Yes, 2007, 2008. But in 2014, my husband and I, we were doing some travelling, and we called back at these places. Wow. And I like to see what's happened, how they've got on, and sort of the end of the story. Yeah. So in Cape Town, they've still got all my fire things around the home, fire alarms and the fire practices and all that sort of thing, and my first aid boxes around. And the place had been completely redecorated, and obviously new mothers and new staff there, but still the same ethos of caring for these single mothers and mothers that have been abused there. And then when we went back to Penang, yes, they'd painted all the rails still the lemon, because I said people that are a little bit visually impaired can still see the yellow on the rails. So they got all those painted yellow, and they would still had the minibus to take them out. And and they'd appointed a training officer. That really pleased me, because doing my sessions had made them realise they need someone for training. So since I've gone, they've got this training officer, Eileen, and she showed me around and showed me how she was doing training sessions for all the staff and things. That was really good. I was really pleased about that.
Yeah, because that getting self-sufficient, really.
Yes.
As far as personnel are concerned. Yes, the friend that we've got who's running the hospital in Zambia, he started off just doing eye clinics, but then came over to Moorfields, trained and went back, and he's now superintendent of the hospital and doing tremendous work. It's great to see people going through. And
yes,
when we were out there, his wife had another child, and we've seen her grow up. She's now in her 20s. She followed her father, but we've been able to support her in different ways over the years. It's great when local people take over, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's what St John's aimed to do, because it's not really British staff out at the eye hospital. They've trained all the Palestinian staff. Some of them even have 2 degrees.
Yeah.
And Ahmed, he was in charge of the School of Nursing, and I shared a large flat with him when I was there. He is now the male matron. He's now the director of the hospital. It's been wonderful to see him get his masters and progress and come, and he's one of the head ones of the hospital.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So looking back to the time in Jerusalem, what were they saying about the relationship of having a Palestinian hospital in the Jewish areas of Jerusalem and working?
It was regarded by everyone with a very high standard. You know, I only had to say I was a volunteer there, and that people really respected it, whether it was a Jewish taxi driver or someone in a hotel. You know, it's so famous. They all sort of love that and respect it. And the amazing thing was that there were 1 or 2 Israeli surgeons that gave their time and came to the hospital. There was a Professor Miron, who was very high up in the Hadassah hospital, and he would come once or twice a week and do the particularly difficult operations.
Yeah.
And there was a female eye surgeon from Ascalon, and she would come along and do some surgery for them. So that was wonderful. And when I spoke to the ordinary people on each side, all they want is peace, really. It's just the politics keep on all the time. The people are just fed up with all these years of strife and war, and they just want to be settled. They just want peace.
Yes.
Incredible.
I'm glad you said that, because one of our memories of going up to meet somebody just in Tiberias, there were 3 men sitting on the settee. There was an Arab, a Jew, and a Christian, and they were getting on so well together. So we said, so what's the problem? And the only 2 words were the politicians.
It is all the time. I went to a lovely concert with 2 pianists playing duets and things. One was Palestinian, one was Israeli, at the Augusta Victoria Hospital.
Yes,
they would have concerts there. And, you know, it was wonderful to see them all working together. Fantastic.
Yeah. And you didn't feel threatened or unsafe at all out there?
No, I had to be careful where I went and what I did. I didn't go on the local transport because there'd been some sort of bombs and things on some of the buses. So what I would do was, if I was going to West Jerusalem, I'd get an Israeli taxi from the nearby Ambassador Hotel. Yeah. And if I was going into the old city and wanted a taxi, I would just get the hospital switchboard to phone for a Palestinian taxi. Yes. So I think you have to be careful where you go and what you do, and just keep thinking of your safety all the time, obviously.
Yes, that's great. So what, out of all that, you obviously are talking much more about Jerusalem and enjoying that, but it must be very difficult to choose which was your best place of going.
Yes.
What you've been doing since, by way of follow-up.
Well, I went, as you know, I went to the leprosy mission hospital in Myanmar just before lockdown, about 3 years ago, and I had about 10 weeks there.
Did you?
So that was quite a privilege, because it's a closed country, and it was quite a privilege to be able to get this special visa to get into the country. I had to go up to the consulate very early morning into London, well, to the embassy really, and wait for it to be issued. Yes.
Well, Gary and I would know in this diocese, and others too, the links between what was Burma, what is now Myanmar, but we hear very little about it. We pray every week for the theological college, but we know very little about Myanmar and what we can do to help, and what Europeans are doing to help. But
It's so poor, you see, because of all that. There's so many ethnic groups and they've been held down with this junta for so long. They're just so poor. They're about 50 years behind any of these other countries in the East. You know, it should be one of the wealthiest country. They've got so many natural resources and things, but it's not being utilised.
No, no. Gosh, that's quite a mouthful. We've really had that's tremendous. I had no idea you've been all around so much. That's Myanmar and Israel, Holy Land, and South Africa as well. And so what are you doing now? What are you doing since?
Well, during lockdown, to keep my brain active, I wrote a book. And it's called Valerie the Whirlwind. And I've been selling the book this year to raise money for the eye hospital. I don't know whether you can see it.
Yes, we can. How do we get hold of that?
So I wrote it every afternoon, and then I had it self-published. And well, anyone's could sort of email me or phone me. And I've been going around all my clubs and groups selling copies, and lots of people my school days, you know, to hear about my mother at Bletchley Park and living in Bletchley years ago. They've all ordered it. So it's been quite good.
Good. Tell us something about, we get it through you. I mean, I've got your phone number here, but
yes.
Have you got a price for it?
Yes, it's £12.
All right.
There, and it makes a lovely Christmas present, obviously. And people can email me at the Young Team, THE, the Young Team, TEAM, 2001 at hotmail.com.
Right. Okay. Perhaps you could send that through to me.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't got that in front of me, but if you could email that through to me, I'll pass it on.
Yes, thank you very much.
That's great. So if we're down in Christchurch, we pick up a copy, or how else do we get it?
Yes, I've got copies at All Saints Church. I'm on the PCC at All Saints Church, Muddyford.
Right.
So obviously I've been selling quite a few copies there. So that's where you could go.
Probably through Joe Heath as well, then, in that case.
Yes. Oh, yes, through Joe. Yes. Yeah.
So apart from the book, you haven't time for anything else, really.
Well, I go around giving all these talks and presentations. I tell people all about my adventures, travels to the East, nursing in the 60s and 70s, stories about my mother at Bletchley Park, all those sort of things to groups, because all the groups are starting back again. So I enjoy that because I meet so many people.
So could your mother tell you what she was doing at Bletchley Park, or couldn't she?
We had her recorded, luckily, because my son is a teacher. He videoed her a couple of years before she died, and he videoed her in 2004. So we have about a 15-minute recording, and she speaks about the work and what she did in a secret room and the seeking of the Shana horse and all that sort of thing, what it was like.
That's amazing. So your whole family's had quite an exciting life.
Really, yes. My father had a hairdressing business in Bletchley, and of course it was a small place in those days. Everyone knew us.
Yes, wonderful. So are you going back abroad at all? And we're coming to the end of our time, but what would you like to say by the way of winding up as far as your...
Well, if that encourages anyone else to think about volunteering abroad, you know, join the USPG or one of these missions and go for it. Go for 6 months.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic. You know, it's only by being there about 6 months that you're really useful, because the first 2 or 3 months you're learning the setup and everything. But you're really helpful to them the second part of the 6 months. Really go for it and volunteer abroad. And it's something you'll always remember. So incredible.
Meantime, those of us who are perhaps too old, we can simply pray for your work and your safety. And well, certainly the work at St John's is current, and Leprosy Mission and USPG. Those are all titles and names that we'll know. But it would be nice to keep in contact with you, and you could, well, certainly if we get hold of one or two of your books, that would be fantastic.
Thank you.
We'll work on that. If you could send me the email address, that would be great.
All right. Yes.
And do thank John for setting you up at your end this morning.
Yes, he's my technician. He helps me with all my PowerPoint talks and things. He's my technician.
So yes, just treat that as a PS. There may be people watching who would like you to come to one of their, it could be Mothers Union or a men's group or something like that. How long do you want for a group like that? 20 minutes, half an hour or so?
Usually I do half an hour or 40 minutes, and they ask questions and things, and I bring all my own equipment. Yeah, so they can just give me a ring and book a talk if they want.
Right. Well, we've certainly got, I was thinking of our men's group, because we're working on next year's programme, and also local Mothers Union are always looking for speakers. Valerie, thank you so much. That's been a fantastic, I really didn't know what was going to happen, because I simply had your name and Joe's enthusiasm. But Gary and I and the rest of the team up here at Fordingbridge are very, very grateful for you spending the time this morning. Thank you. It's been, I won't say a relaxing time on the settee, because it's, it's certainly your enthusiasm and ability has really gone on, but we can pray for it and we can support those who are out there, because Middle East is very much in our hearts, as is at a distance Myanmar, because we know very,
Yes.
very little about it. And of course, South Africa, some of us have had contact there as well. Anything else you'd like to say? Or
No, no, it's been a privilege to speak to you. That would be
Good.
very nice if
Well,
people would contact me. I'd like that.
Good. We'll do that. Thanks to you and John for being with us on this Saturday morning. Thanks, Valerie, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Bye-bye then. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.